Right, in today's video I want to talk about 5 really bomb-proof plants that you're going to struggle to kill, are good for novices, so if the dog sits on them, the kids play on them or you lie on them, it's not going to matter. You can't kill them. Right, so out of those 5 plants, I'm going to assume that you've got sunshine and you've got a fairly good open site for these plants, because obviously some plants need more sun than others. Here we've got 2 sun lovers. The first one is this yellow flower. And this is a perennial, so when I say perennial that means it's going to come back year after year. This is a perennial sunflower and its proper name, its Latin name is Helianthus. Don't get too hung up on the Latin names, so long as you know it's a perennial sunflower. That's all you need to have in your vocabulary, if you like, when you go to a nursery to try and find these things. These are extremely vigorous, not in the sense that they're going to take over, but it just means that you know, if you don't get round to sort of mulching the soil, you know, feeding the soil, it doesn't matter too much because these are tough. They'll just put up with fairly rubbishy ground. The classic scenario is, you know, you've moved into a new house, and most new houses don't tend to have lovely lush soil. It tends to be the scrapings from the housing estate that's been gone into the ground at the end. Now these are the sort of plants which will put up with that. So your perennial sunflower, and next to it is one of its neighbour, is a very, very enthusiastic neighbour. And for those of you who do recognise this, you'll think you're not going to recommend this one, surely. This is Monarch, which is its common name. Its proper name is Crocosmia. And this Crocosmia has an infamous, if you like, cultivar name of Lucifa. It's one of my favourite plants, and for many people they inherit a garden where this has gone nuts. But you can grow this in such a way that it doesn't grow nuts, because this is growing in the soil in a recycled plastic bucket with the bottom cut out of the bottom, so that the roots can't spread sideways. It's a really neat trick for growing really tough, bomb-proof plants in the ground without them sort of taking over the world, which we don't want. The 2 growing side by side look absolutely fabulous. Reasonable similarity in heights, but you do get that variation, and it's sometimes nice to mix things up. But I love these, and they are absolutely top of my list in terms of the indestructibles. This is a plant called a sedum, spelt with an S, and sedums have the common name of stone crop. They're succulent plants, and when you say succulent plants, that means that, you know, it's as it sounds really. The leaves, unlike a normal one, are almost quite fleshy. One of the best things about sedums is that they will grow in sort of very dry conditions, and unlike some plants which when they first go in you have to sort of mollycoddle them a little bit, when these guys go in and you go away on holiday for 2 weeks and there's been a heat wave, or certainly like the summer we've had this year, which has been extreme, these chaps love it. In fact, the sunnier it is and the warmer it is, the better the growth. Now these are yet to flower. This is one called Sedum Carl. That's its cultivar name. So when I say cultivar name, it's just kind of it's the different flavours of sedum almost which have been bred. Autumn Joy is a very widely grown one. Carl is great. It has a lovely sort of pinky red flower, and it's got masses and masses of flowers, and these are poised, just kind of waiting to flower. But it's not always about flowers with plants. You know, for me, sedums are great when they're in flower, but this is actually for me their moment. This is when I love them. They've got the beautiful structure of the leaves. The flowers, even though they've not quite popped, are really, really quite stunning. And when it's been wet and you've had a bit of rain, you get sort of these raindrops sitting on the surface of the flowers. Extremely tough, very, very tough. And come the spring, so kind of traditionally March, April time, you dig these things up, chop them into segments and replant them. It's amongst the easiest plants to propagate. And when you've got one plant, you can very quickly end up with several. So out of the plants we're looking at so far, they all lend themselves to that. So you don't have to have a fortune behind you to get these plants. You only need a few good ones. Start chopping them up at the right time of year and you'll soon fill a large space. You might be familiar with strawberry plants, and if your lawn at least is as bad as mine, you'll have bits of wild strawberry growing in it. Wild strawberries, very tough, and they have very many tough cousins, if you like, and this is one of them. This is a perennial. Again, we've already talked about what a perennial is. It's something that's going to come back every year, and this is a perennial Potentilla. Potentillas range from shrubby plants that you might come across in a supermarket car park. They're one of the most widely used plants in that sort of environment. But they also have a huge batch of relatives, if you like, which are like this. This is a plant that's been in here for a good 6-7 years now, and every year it flowers like it's its first. It has a very, very beautiful dark flower to it, very simple flower, and this is one called Monarch's Velvet. So it's Potentilla, Monarch's Velvet. It likes a sunny position. It's not overly fussy about depth of soil, i.e. it will grow in very shallow soil, and at the end of the season, when it's looking a bit scruffy, you can either leave it up over the winter or you can cut it back with shears, and come the spring it just sprouts back again. It's one of my absolute favourites because not only is it, it falls into that category of just being tough, it just flowers endlessly now until, well, we're in the beginning of August now, into October easily, and it's been flowering for a good 3 or 4 weeks before that. It's very beautiful. It sort of sprawls. It's a nice thing to have spilling into your other plants, and it's just an absolute corker. If there's one plant I've got the utmost respect for, it's this one here. Now this is one called Persicaria Red Dragon. It gets its name obviously from the colours of the leaves, but the reason I respect it so much is we have an area in the garden here that we have a sort of an autumn bonfire on every season, and in the corner of that bed there was a plant of this that had been there for many years, and despite the fact that it gets semi-incinerated every single season, it comes back every single spring. It's funny because if you read some of the books, they don't actually describe this as a particularly hardy plant, but for my money it's amazing. It really is. I absolutely love it for the colour of its leaves, very intense colours, not only to the leaves but the stems, and then later on in the season you get these very pretty white flowers popping up. But it's a plant that very much you grow for its foliage more than its flowers. For me, I like that because if you place too much reliance on flowers, then you kind of all your eggs are in one basket. But if you spread it out and cash in on the foliage, then you kind of you create that sort of interest for as long as possible. Propagating is easy, much like the sedum. You split it and divide it in the spring, or you can take cuttings from it. But that's something we'll look at in a future video. So Persicaria Red Dragon. This one's in a pot. But it's just as happy in the ground, and it doesn't spread aggressively either, so don't worry that you're going to plant this and again it's going to take over the world. It's a very well behaved plant. It forms a good tight clump, but it really lends itself to being divided from time to time. So it's one that really is worth putting on your list. I've already talked about the Helianthus, the perennial sunflower. I've got to talk about this one as well, just as a sort of an added bonus. This is Rudbekia. It's the black-eyed Susan, and again it sort of falls into that same category of just being utterly reliable. A real joy at this time of year, well into September, into October. Great for the bees, great for the butterflies, and every bomb-proof garden needs to have this at some point. So those are my 5+1 favourite bomb-proof plants. I'm sure you have your own. Why don't you let me know and leave a comment below.